My name is Addison Boysnick. I'm so excited to welcome you to the Disability Advocates Coalition's Disability Issues Forum. I want to thank you for supporting me and my friends and the issues that affect us in our families. People not with disabilities, they are people first. It is my honor to introduce to one of our board members, Marissa Pizzinia.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Addison. We love that intro. Thank you so much. I'd like to recognize our founding board members that are here with us today first. We have Deborah Tamai, we have Lydia Fonseca, we have Melanie Watson, and we have Ms. Becca Bortnick. It's been amazing working alongside these amazing individuals. Our DAP mission is to facilitate systemic change through outreach, education, and dissemination of information to people with disabilities, family members, supporters, professionals, the general public, and policymakers on issues affecting the inclusion of people with disabilities in our community. We're grateful for this invaluable opportunity to highlight issues affecting the disability community and to learn about candidates' stances on these critical issues. Moderating for us this evening is a recognized leader in the public and private sectors, having over 20 years of experience in negotiating and advocating to obtain results. As an attorney, as a mediator, as a state legislator, and a fundraiser, and currently as a University of Texas Rio Grande Valley Senior Vice President of Governmental and Community Relations. It is my honor to introduce our moderator for this evening, Ms. Veronica Gonzalez.
Well, thank you so much, and it is such a pleasure to be with everyone this evening. And Addison, always nice to see you. She just turned 15, by the way, and was very proud of the fact that she is now she's already in her middle of her teenage years, so it's great to be with you. And as was mentioned, my name is Veronica Gonzalez, and I'll be serving as your moderator this evening. You know, members of the disability community face many unique challenges, including housing, accessible transportation, community integration, inclusive environments, and access to healthcare services. The purpose of the forum this evening is to give voters in the Rio Grande Valley an opportunity to hear from our 2022 candidates as they discuss their priorities and viewpoints concerning disability rights and policy. We invited candidates from both political parties to attend this evening. We hope to create an open dialogue and bring greater awareness and education about the critical issues through this nonpartisan candidate forum. So we're going to begin this evening with our district attorney race. We have our two candidates up here. I'd like to introduce you to them. We have Ms. Nereida Lopez Singletary and Mr. Terry Palacios. Welcome to both of the candidates. So let's start. I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction, and then I'll have a question for y'all, and you can answer. There'll be a few questions. I think you have about 3 minutes for each question. So people with disabilities are more likely than people without disabilities to be victims of crime. From 2017 to 2019, the rate of violent victimization against persons with disabilities was almost 4 times the rate for persons without disabilities, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics. What steps will you take to address the sexual assault of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities? Let's start with you, Ms. Lopez Singletary.
Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing us, Disability Advocacy Coalition, the opportunity to be here to present some of the solutions that we have that are affecting all our members in our community. So in reference to your question, what are some of the steps that we will take? You know, every 2 minutes, an individual in this country is sexually abused. These numbers are just shocking to all of us. And how do we do this? So in Ivalville County, in December of 2021, Senate House Bill 476 required the creation of a sexual assault response team. And this response team has been created in Ivalville County. So what do we need moving forward we need to be able to continue to educate, to train, and to prevent. It's a community effort that we all have to do. My mission in running for district attorney is to collaborate with all of us in this community to be able to address some of those issues. And what we need to do is start from the bottom again. As a former educator, starts in our schools. You know, a lot of our members with disabilities, they do have the ability to voice some of the issues that are going on. And if we get involved in schools with the parental involvement organizations, letting them know how it is they can report this. A lot of our individuals are sometimes isolated, and they're also sometimes just being taken care of by certain caretakers, but they do attend schools, and that's where we need to start. We need to start empowering them and training them how it is for them to go ahead and make this outcries. And like I said, the sexual assault response team, they work in collaboration with others, with Safe Haven, with Mujeres Unidas, and other organizations are going to be able to address this issue so that we're going to be able to prosecute and solve and take forward some of these cases at the DA's office. We need to start empowering them for them to report the crimes, and when that happens, we also need to empower them and give them that background, knowing that we are there to protect them. And then prevention. It's not so simply seeking convictions. How do we prevent this from going forward? And a lot of it has to do with awareness. Training our investigators when these reports are being done, what to look for, how to address when the victims are coming forward, to be patient with them, to be able to address those things so that we can be able to go forward and give them justice. Because at the end of the day, what we want justice for the members of our community, and that's how I plan to further collaborate with our sexual assault response team and going forward with awareness, training, and prevention.
Thank you. Mr. Palacios, what steps will you take to address the sexual assault of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invite here, and thank you for your time. As a criminal defense attorney, I've tried a few sexual assault cases, and those cases are very difficult, not only for the defense, but also for the state to prove. Now, I could imagine it's more difficult when we're dealing with somebody with a disability in order to communicate. So the proper thing to do is to educate not only our officers in reference to people with mental health issues, our investigators, and our prosecutors in order to effectively train to effectively prosecute these cases, these guys. And I think what we need to add into that mix is assistance of a mental health professional to assist not only our initial officer, but our investigator, and even our prosecutors, so we can together prosecute these cases. It starts with the officer out there. Now, we need to utilize this professional, mental health professional, not only at the time the crime happens, is at the time of they get a forensic exam, make sure they're with the victim, and the same exam when they go to the hospital and get examined, a physical exam. We need to provide our professional mental health professional out there to assist and help, so we can have a solid case and prosecute it and make sure our community is safe, especially for people with disabilities.
Thank you. This next set of questions, I'll start with you, Mr. Palacios, on this next set, but let me introduce the question. So people with disabilities often go through the criminal legal system and are not offered support services. Recidivism rates have increased over 50% among people with mental health difficulties. People with mental health illnesses that are incarcerated or housed for longer durations than those without. They are typically incarcerated for very minor offenses such as disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, or trespassing. Community services can be paid for by Medicaid, whereas jail costs come primarily from the county's local budget. Would you support diversion programs to move people with mental health disabilities from the criminal legal system into treatment and support services in the community?
Yes, I've been trying to. I've been trying to come up. This is part of my program as an assisting DA, as a criminal DA, is to have something more proactive. Instead of jailing people with mental health issues, I want to create what is called a crisis center. In other words, if somebody gets arrested and our officer recognizes that he has a mental health issue and it's something that is not serious, real serious crime, he needs to be taken to the center, get evaluated, and maybe even helped. So that is real important for me. Now there is a lot of things we can do to try to prevent incarceration of these mental health patients, and one is having an AIP program, which we already do for people who don't have disabilities. Now AIP program is at home imprisonment, so we could be monitoring them, make sure they're not getting in trouble, make sure they're getting their treatment. I think those are things that we already have in place. We just gotta have it specifically for mental health people that have issues with mental health.
Thank you. Ms. Silva Singletary. Would you support diversion programs to move people with mental health disabilities from the criminal legal system into treatment and support services in the community?
Yes, absolutely. The United States is the only country in the world that incarcerates morbid citizens. And that is something that we are all fearful. As someone who's had a family member and has family members with disability, that is our biggest fear. That if we're not around and something were to happen, that they will get arrested. And what will happen to them? Typically, a member of society that suffers from a disability is the last one to leave the scene, the first one to get arrested, and the first one to give a confession. And we need to be cognizant of those things. So when we have one of our members, for whatever reason, it is, a lot of those are petty offenses, and it's based a lot on sometimes also proper training from the officers, of them not being able to communicate with them. We have a lot of members that are nonverbal, are not able to understand those cues, and that leads them to perhaps being so fast in arresting someone. So what do we do when they are arrested? We have to have these diversion programs to allow them to be out there. We have a big problem in our county with overcrowding in our jails, and we need to save those resources. This past year, we're at $6 million housing inmates in other counties. We need to save those resources on people that are arrested for minor offenses, non-violent. Of course, we're not talking about the violent offenses, but the non-violent when it comes to members of our community with disabilities. We need to provide them opportunities to be at home, to continue to have their treatment. When someone is arrested, their treatment stops. And therefore, we have a big issue on them getting them back again on their medication, them being alone, not having their family members being scared. There's issues at times where someone might break the law, but we need to give them a second opportunity, especially for our members with disabilities, that at times it is not their fault when they get arrested. It's perhaps other issues that are around in their environment with family members, or perhaps them just being scared. So by all means, I am, of course, in favor of having more diversion programs, especially for our members with disability in our community.
Thank you. Now let me ask you this, because you mentioned diversion programs, but for those that are in prison, how would you ensure that people with disabilities who are in prison are identified as people with disabilities and fully accounted for and provided with appropriate accommodations? For instance, that communication supports and behavioral mental health supports and academic related resources are provided. Ms. Silva Singletary, let me start with you.
Yes, when it comes to them being incarcerated, we need to make sure that they are identified immediately. When their case starts, we need to have proper, the individuals are properly trained to be able to identify what is their disability and how we're going to go ahead and tailor to their needs. We need to tailor to their needs to be able to have a plan for them when they are in custody. And a lot of these individuals are also our juveniles that are getting incarcerated and they're staying there long periods of time. So how do we provide them with also their classes where they're not missing out on their school, where they're also keeping up with their treatment? So that needs to be done immediately as soon as the case starts, and the case starts with law enforcement, and having that training. It's a group effort. We all have to work together, from law enforcement to judges, to people in our jail system, to professionals, to identify them, tailor their needs. What is it that they're going to be needing while they're there, while their case is pending, and to ensure that they're not missing out, like I said, on their treatment, that they're not missing out on their school, and that they're not missing out on having equal representation and equal justice for them, so where their case can move speedily and get them where they need to be and back with their families, back in the community, and also having to avoid that recidivism where they're going back again, is prevention. We always have to keep in mind that at the end of the day, what we want is prevention for this not to continue to happen in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Palacios, how would you ensure that their disabilities are fully accounted for and provided with appropriate accommodations?
Well, basically, it's a part of educating our people that are holding these individuals. And I think education goes a long way, not only educating our jailers, but the people who are actually housing them. Right now, we don't accommodate our mental health people that are incarcerated at our jail. But we need to provide a system to put them in there. We need to have mental health professionals working not only with our jail system, but with our DA's office, with our investigators, and with police officers. So they know a lot more about mental health issues than what a police officer or a jailer would do. So with their assistance, we can accommodate and provide them if they're going to be incarcerated. So we can have the proper treatment for them, and their proper medication, and they can be safe at the same time they're in jail.
Thank you. And I had a third question for y'all, but y'all actually answered it with your answers to these questions. And that one was about ensuring how would you ensure that your probation officers, investigators, and others are trained to appropriately interact with people with disabilities. And I think that the answers you gave shows you want to start from the beginning and all the way through the system to make sure that everybody has the proper training and that people are receiving the type of services that they deserve. So those are the candidates for the district attorney's position, and we want to thank them. We actually want to thank all the candidates that are with us tonight. It is not easy to run for public office. It's a lot of work. You're out there, you put yourself out there, your time away from your family, your friends, your job, and you really do expose yourself completely to everyone. So we thank them for taking the time and wanting to serve their community, and thank you again to both of our candidates. Best wishes to you both.
Thank you.
We are now going to transition over to our state representative, District 35, and we invited both candidates. One has appeared today. So we have with us our incumbent, our state representative of the district, Mr. Oscar Longoria. Well, thank you, Representative Longoria, for joining us this evening. As I mentioned, we did extend an invitation to your opponent as well, and we appreciate the fact that you were with us this evening. I have just a few questions for you. Due to the enactment and implementation of a key civil rights law, which was the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, high school graduation rates for people with disabilities have increased, but only 45% since 1995, with an associated decrease in dropout rates. Similarly, enrollment in college has doubled for students with disabilities. Nevertheless, local school districts continue to struggle to serve students with disabilities, and those seeking higher education continue to face enormous barriers to success. What steps will you take to ensure that the education system in Texas meets the needs of all children, including those with disabilities, and how would you hold schools accountable?
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having me out here. I think it starts with funding. It's something that we have to look at. This past legislative session, we did some initiatives to try to increase that. But the session prior to that, we enacted House Bill 3, which put up towards of $970 additional per pupil. And I think that's incredibly important. When you start looking at educating a child, you have to make sure not only that the teachers and counselors and everyone that's associated with them is properly trained and incentivized. It's kind of a catch-22 because you also have to have some accountability on the districts, but you got to make sure that they have the flexibility because every child is different. And I think what we're lacking, but we're focusing on and working towards, is making sure that we implement programs, initiatives, make sure we put accountability on the schools to make sure that they educate these children and get them through the education system, and then have that transition to secondary schooling, whether it be vocational, technical, higher education, and affording that opportunity. I know A&M has a program right now where they're bringing in a lot of students from the disabled community, and they're going and putting them in workforce, and they're going in education. think that's what the goal should be. Now, we understand everyone is different, but we have to afford them the opportunities. And another issue is we need to work with the families, because many times that district where that child goes to does not have or may not have the proper resources or the programs for that individual child. So we have to have the flexibility for the family to seek supplemental care or services that may not be afforded at the district, but at the same time make sure that the district is included and working with families. So I think it boils down to funding. We've done progress towards it. I think the entire state and the legislature understands that, but it's never enough, and I'm not content at where we're at, so it's just something that we're going to continue to work towards. I think the pandemic made us kind of reevaluate the education system, because we got into this virtual program, and I think unfortunately this community suffered a lot, because a lot of these students are hands-on. A lot of them work with that one-on-one interaction, so everyone was affected by it. But I'm really concerned that the disabled community may have regressed because of what happened and because of those changes that we had to make because of the pandemic. But I'm optimistic, and I think it's something we're going to look at and look at the benchmarks to make sure that if we did have a gap, we can do whatever we can to make sure that we decrease that gap in the next legislative session.
Thank you for that, and thank you also for the continuing the funding that was in House Bill 3 for the schools. That was very critical. And for the emphasis on mental health, I think that we're seeing more and more that the legislature is looking not only at the physical health of an individual, but also the mental health. So thank you for that. And speaking of which, Medicaid provides health coverage to over 74 million Americans, including eligible low-income adults, children, pregnant women, elderly adults, and 10 million non-elderly people with disabilities. Medicaid is administered by states and funded jointly by the state and federal government. People with disabilities are often the people most in need of quality health insurance, especially long-term services and supports, which are only provided through Medicaid. What is your vision for health care in our state and local communities with a view towards the needs of people with all kinds of disabilities?
Well, I think the simple answer is Medicaid expansion. We've looked at it, it's not so much of a Democrat or Republican issue. It boils down to a Texan issue, because it's tax dollars that come from every Texan. They go to the federal government, and unfortunately we're sending it to other states. So if you look at the simple numbers, it's our money, it's going to other states, and we should get it back because we're paying for it. I think with the expansion of Medicaid, it'll afford a lot of programs that we currently don't have in place. And you look at the state's budget in the aggregate, and a big portion of it is spent on healthcare related expenses. Now, if we expand Medicaid, we'll get a better dollar-for-dollar match, and we'll be able to decrease that amount and increase the care, and at the same time be able to fund other programs that the state has. So clearly we need to look at expanding Medicaid. I think for far too long we've been able to try to work other ways without expanding it. You look at these 1115 waivers, and under the prior administration, we were able to kind of work through those 1115, but even now, we figured we'd have an easier path with those 1115 waivers. The current administration does not view them. I think they're just like, well, you're either going to expand because you're using this coupon deal that you're trying to kind of, expand. We're not really expanding. So, if you look at the dollars and cents, we have to expand Medicaid, and the reason we have to expand it is because it'll afford so many more healthcare options for all of Texas. It doesn't matter, age, demographics, ethnicity. It's just something that we have to do. And clearly, the disability community would benefit from this, because a lot of those programs where we want to make the transition to make sure that these community members can transition and have some independence and not have to rely on going into some type of institutional setting or a more setting where they're not as independent as they could be working from home or living at home. You need to provide quality attendance, you need to provide legal services, and all that costs money. So I think that the easiest thing to do, first of all, is expanding Medicaid and affording those dollars.
Great. Well, thank you for that, and we have heard that for so many years, and we know that legislation doesn't happen overnight. Things don't happen overnight, but the need is tremendous here in our county, and in the healthcare needs. And I know we're going to next have one of our commissioners, our county commissioners, come up, and they know very well the need for indigent care here in our community, and especially also the need for those living with disabilities. So we want to thank you, Representative Longoria, for joining us this evening. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you so much for the invite, and The disability community has always been important to me. Two of my biggest accomplishments over the last 10 years is I got $1 million for the Lawn Hill Park in Harlingen to make it all inclusive, and I was able to get $1 million for Ed Couch to do an all-inclusive swimming pool. So they're near and dear to me, and I want to make sure we prioritize all Texans, and especially the disabled community, because this is something very important.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are now going to transition over to one of the county positions, and we want to welcome Mr. Eddie Cantu, our Commissioner for Precinct 2. And while he's coming up here,
How are you, beautiful? How are you? Can I have a hug?
I know, he's great.
I want to let you know we did invite Mr. Cantu's opponent as well, and he did not join us this evening. So, Mr. Cantu, I could ask you questions, but I think it might be best if you just want to speak to us about your future plans to promote inclusion and accessibility for the people living with disabilities.
Okay. Well, we started with the help of capable kids and the advocates in our community with an inclusive park. As you may know, there was a city in the county that was gonna build an inclusive park, and for whatever reason, you know, sometimes it's politics, sometimes it's funding, it didn't go through. And so I reached out to the advocates and to capable kids, and I wanted to see how we can partner and build something beautiful for our community. They came to my office. Pretty much, I told them I don't know anything about building parks for kids with disabilities. If you guys have a layout, if you guys have a plan, let's build it. And so we worked on that, and within 6 months, we're under construction, and we built a $1 million inclusive park. And since then, other cities and other communities have followed suit. So I believe that we started a trend, and I'm hoping one day, and hopefully in the next 5 years, that we remove inclusive from the word park, and that we have all our parks inclusive to all. Some other stuff that we've done is we were the first entity to hire an individual with a disability, and we worked with Texas Workforce Commission. We brought Jose into our office, and we worked through trying to hire more individuals with disabilities. You know, we're on a first name basis with Texas Workforce Commission. We want to continue to partner. One person is not enough. But we always want to set the example that if other people see what we do in Precinct 2, they will have the courage and the willingness to go out, build inclusive parks, hire people with disabilities, and do some of the stuff that we need to be inclusive. I had an individual, a friend of mine, who's sitting here, Rodrigo came to my office, and he wanted to talk about doing some advocacy for people that had hearing impairments, that were deaf or hard of hearing. And we talked through all his ideas, and one of his ideas was to create a scholarship. And so I picked that idea, and I said, look, if there's anything that I'm really good at, it's raising money. And so Rodrigo and I put together a scholarship fund. And the scholarship fund, we wanted to help people that had a similar disability to Rodrigo. We raised $16,000, and we gave $5,000 of it to UTRGV to help some of those students that had to buy certain things to help them go to school, to make their life easier at the university. So we have an open door policy, and we're looking for any ways to make our community more inclusive. And it starts with a park sometimes. Sometimes it starts with quality of life.
Well, thank you for that. And I think you said something very important, that is to collaborate with the experts, those who know of something that we may not know, because otherwise you might be throwing money towards something that wasn't really the solution. So thank you again for joining this evening. We appreciate that you took the time to be here with us and to speak to our community, our disability community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are now going to transition over to the race for Ivalville County Judge. And I know I saw two of our three candidates here this evening. If we want to have them come on up, we have the incumbent Richard Cortez, and we also have candidate Norma Ramirez. We have Steve up here for you. Welcome to you both, and I am happy to say that we are on time. So that's unusual in these type of forums. So we've got a timekeeper here that's making sure everybody knows how much time they have for the questions. But I think for you we have one question, and I'm gonna lead in on this one. The county judges. These are the candidates for Ivalville County Judge. It is a big job to be the judge of this county, because the county continues to grow each and every day, and our disability community grows as well. People with disabilities account for nearly 20% of the population of the United States and are more likely to lose their homes, have property damage, or die as a result of disasters. They're also more likely to be separated from their family members, overlooked by relief volunteers, and suffer injuries or health-related complications. And for example, during the beginning of the pandemic in the Rio Grande Valley, the deaf and hard of hearing community experienced communication barriers to access public health information. Without the input of the disability community, these communication barriers continue to exist. Emergency management officials must plan for and respond to people with disabilities equally and as effectively as they do for the entire community. So if elected or re-elected, what will you do to ensure that people with disabilities are included in the planning and implementation of emergency preparedness efforts on the state, county, and local levels, especially during the pandemic? And we'll start with you, Mr. Mace.
With me?
We'll start on this end.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. Norma?
First of all, it's not working. Don't worry. It's working.
I think it's working now. First of all, I really want to thank all of you for allowing me the opportunity to be before you today. This forum is especially dear to me because it hits home. Having a sibling, a son, and a niece with disabilities, I know firsthand the struggles that a family can have and how much stress can be. I think that in order to be able to implement a program or a policy, is we've got to invite the advocates or the people with experience with disabilities to the table when we're implementing emergency preparedness plans, when we're implementing how to communicate with the special disabilities. One of the things that I think we have failed, not only with the disabilities, but the entire communication that we've had with our community, there's still a lot of confusion as where to go to get different types of assistance. And so when we have members of our community that we know that need assistance, we've got to start educating not only their families, but we also have to educate the audience as to where they can seek that. Before I came to this forum, I went to our county's website to see what I could find for Disabilities Act, and I wasn't able to find anything on there. I think I found one line that said that there was a list of disabilities, but if you click on it, you can't find who those are. So we need to make sure that if we're going to help our community with disabilities, that we make sure that not only do we target the areas and the families, but we make sure that we educate them through, I think, a marketing tool is television, because that's something that we watch. So, I don't see that anything is being done to push that kind of communication in this county and throughout. We're slow, we move slow, and we, we don't train our law enforcement, we don't train our professionals, we don't train our county employees, and we don't commit to having a committee anymore, especially a department that handles these types of issues, that we won't be able to overcome the communication skills of reaching out to those. Thank you.
Thank you. So Judge Cortez, let me repeat the question. You're elected or re-elected. What will you do to ensure that people with disabilities are included in the planning and implementation of emergency preparedness efforts on the state, county, and local levels, especially during the pandemic?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate this group for asking us to be here tonight. When you talk about servicing a certain segment of our community, you're not really talking about a destination. You're talking about a journey that you take, because there's always situations that are occurring with time. And I've learned one thing in my time in public service is that when you all get together and you look at all of the experts that are in a certain group, you come up with a better plan. There's 2 stages to finding a solution. You have the analysis stage, you have the implementation stage, but you also have to have the sustainability stage. Because if you decide something and it's only for a short amount of time, then it doesn't give you long-term benefits. So we've started that in Hidalgo County. We did a resource guide for veterans, but we also did a resource guide for the mentally ill. We recognize the need to be able to consolidate information and be able to transmit it efficiently and effectively to those people that are in need. So we are already in the process in the county with the help of all of the commissioners and all our staff in trying to do the same thing for disability. Commissioner Cantu already told you, we already have 2 all-inclusive parks. I was very concerned to understand that we really were behind in providing services to disabled. I realize now how far behind we are, and we do have a lot of work to do. When you talk about emergency management, we're so concerned with what's going on that we sometimes forget, those that are disabled. So today, I've learned a lot, and I think that the best way to come up with an efficient and effective way of serving the disabled is to form the committee, which is the analysis part. Tell us all the things that the disabled needs to have in place so that we can serve you not only in the county, but we can share that information with the schools and the cities so that everybody kind of has the same program, because obviously this is very important. I realize also that always budgetary issues are a concern. During COVID, when we had all the meetings and adjustments, we have to have a sign language person, to help us. Some charge $300 an hour, some $120. So there is a financial burden to that thing. That's why whatever plan that we come up with, that it needs to be sustainable. So I think that partnering with others to be able for all of us maybe to share those type of people together can help us with the budgetary problems. But I'm here to tell you that I'm glad. I'm here to learn from you, and I want to apply good practices along with all the commissioners to best serve the community. The last thing I want to say is that I know that we are subject to our environment, so we need to make sure that we don't separate these people. We include them in everything that we do, and I look forward to doing that in the county.
Thank you so much. And we also have joining us Tanya Ramirez, our 3rd candidate for Hidalgo County Judge. And so thank you for coming, Tanya. And I'm going to repeat the question. If elected, what will you do to ensure that people with disabilities are included in the planning and implementation of emergency preparedness efforts on the state, county, and local levels, especially during the pandemic?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. Sorry, I thought it was the other building. So first of all, it's not something that I would be learning or something that I'm planning to do. It's something that actually I've already been working as City Commissioner McAllen to try to move forward when it comes to our disability community, our special needs community. We have been, unfortunately, They've been neglected for a long time, and one of the most important things that we did in the city of McAllen is we put a huge focus on the needs of that community. I was actually one of the founders of the Disability Advisory Board for the city of McAllen, which I'm very proud of. We just created it a couple months ago, and this is not in preparation for anything. It's just something that we've been working very hard, and not just right now getting to know your community. I've been working alongside with members of all different nonprofits that work with people with disabilities to learn from them. And that's something that I've been doing it not just for the last couple months, but I've been doing it since actually before I even got elected as city commissioner. And that's something that I want to take to the county. That's actually one of the reasons why I decided to run for county judge. Because the way that we did that in McAllen, we focused on what we can do from our parks to our services when it comes to different departments, of what we can do to better serve this very important and fragile community. Unfortunately, about 20% of the people with disabilities get left behind, especially when it comes to disasters. And that's something that we need to continue to focus on. And it's not like, oh, I need to learn about it. No, I've been learning about everything that we can do for this community. The city of McAllen, we actually we implemented subtitles for our city commission. There is subtitles so that way people that can't listen, they can know what's going on in our city. As well as, actually, we also added Spanish as well to that. And with the advisory board, we're going to be not only, and I'm not going to be McAllen anymore. However, the future city commissions and the mayors, they will have a platform where they can go and listen to the people in this community, so that way they can learn from them what they need in their city. And that's exactly the same thing that we're going to do, but we're going to do it countywide. I've already started, and we're going to continue doing that work for our special needs community. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we want to thank all three candidates for county judge for coming here this evening and for your concern for the community, disability community. As you mentioned, right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, but there's always some emergency, right, that we're preparing for. It seems like we've been lucky that we haven't had any kind of hurricane or other things, but emergency preparedness is a very big issue for us, and of course, even more so for those who are living with disabilities. So thanks to all three of you for joining us this evening, and we're now going to transition over to the next. I think we have our state senator joining us next, and so if you will go ahead and take a seat, or you're welcome to leave if you must, but thank you again for joining us. And now we're going to transition over to the state senate race for District 20. Joining us this evening is the incumbent, Mr. Juan Chuy Hinojosa. No stranger to this place or to mission. I think he might have grown up here. And we did invite Senator Hinojosa's opponent to join us this evening, and he did not join us, but we are so very happy to have him here, Senator. Thank you for coming this evening, and you're welcome to have a seat, and I'll be asking you a question, or stand, whatever's preferable for you. So thanks again for joining us. I have two questions for you, and we've got a timekeeper there, so he's going to be holding up a sign when it's close to time. In some localities, our students with disabilities are not taught the challenging curriculum available to students without disabilities, with the correct modifications and supports. How would you ensure that students with disabilities have equal access to ambitious educational opportunities that other students have with the appropriate modifications and supports?
First, I want to thank everyone for holding this forum. I think it's very important for parents to get involved, especially with the children, with students with disabilities. And I answer those questions in writing. So let me just make a couple of comments, because I think it's very important. I always speak about education being the best equalizer we have in our society. But it should be education for everyone, all our students. treating those students with disabilities. And for us, we are trying to push legislation to make sure that our students with disabilities get the support they need, the classes they need, and whatever else the schools can provide to make sure that they have the same equal education that every other student gets. Every session, over the last 3 or 4 sessions, I've introduced legislation to have the state of Texas serve its and waive its sovereignty so that you can push and make school districts or any governmental entity comply with the American Disabilities Act. And that's important. So I believe in accountability. I do believe in placing rules in place to make sure that our school districts comply with our laws and our rules and regulations, that our students who are disabled get the same opportunity to be able to get an equal education as anybody else. They are just as deserving, they're gifts from God, and we ought to provide them the same opportunity and desire that everybody else has.
Thank you for that, and you're most correct. Talent runs in a lot of different individuals in different ways, and we need to nurture that talent. Students with disabilities frequently lack access to general education classrooms. Currently, school inclusion for people with disabilities varies by school district. What would you do to ensure that all schools that you represent follow a directive to be accountable and inclusive practices once the students with disabilities are identified? And I think they set another mic there for you, because your mic, even though your voice carries, it might be better with the mic for those that are listening online.
Testing.
There you
It
go.
works.
There you
Okay.
go.
Sorry about that. Well, first of all, unfortunately, many times we pass laws and rules in the state of Texas through TA, and many school districts do not comply with the rules. They do not comply with the laws. Many times because they don't know about it, many times because they're not a priority, or many times because they look the other way, and there's no enforcement mechanism. My approach to this type of situation and making sure that all school districts comply is provide a forum and a process by which parents can file complaints, and parents can follow through on any issue that they have with school districts not complying with any of the rules or any of the laws that we have, not only in the state of Texas, but the federal government, to make sure that the school districts are held accountable, to make sure they're transparent, and provide the enforcement that there is some type of fine or punishment or process of which school districts need to pay attention and make this a priority to provide the resources, provide the classroom and the support that our students with disabilities have.
Thank you for that, Senator. And I do know that the school districts now are they grade them A through F on many different accountability measures. And so, the school districts, we all know they've got a lot on their hands right now, especially teachers are probably doing more work than they ever have, but we want to take care of the most vulnerable. So we appreciate the fact that you joined us this evening and your support for this disability community. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you. We heard earlier from State Representative Longoria, who is joining us, and now we have another state representative joining us from the Mid-Valley, Representative Armando Martinez. He's with District 39. And we also, I don't know, we have his opponent also here, Mr. Jimmy Garcia. He was invited to attend, and I don't believe he is here, so we are going to ask the questions of Representative Martinez. Thank you for being here, Mondo.
Absolutely, thank you so much.
Thank you, and let me get back to, these were some questions. I know you weren't here at the time, so you didn't hear the answers given by Representative Longoria, but I have a feeling that the two of you think very much alike on some of these issues. So I'm going to lead in with a little intro, and then I'll ask you the question. Due to the enactment and implementation of the key civil rights law, which was the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, high school graduation rates for people with disabilities have increased, but only 45% since 1995, with an associated decrease in dropout rates. Similarly, enrollment in colleges doubled for students with disabilities. Nevertheless, local school districts struggle to serve students with disabilities, and those seeking higher education continue to face enormous barriers to success. So what steps would you take to ensure that the education system in Texas meets the needs of all children, including those with disabilities, and how would you hold schools accountable?
Absolutely, and I think that's a very good question, especially during these times. And I want to thank the Disability Advocacy Coalition for inviting us and having this forum here. First of all, the Texas legislature has already been taking steps in addressing and ensuring the Texas system is meeting the needs of all children. You know, every child deserves an equitable education, no matter where you are, where you come from, or what disability you have. So a key component to addressing accountability is making sure our schools have the necessary resources to succeed, which translates into funding for public schools. You know, my wife tells me all the time she's an elementary school teacher, teaches 4th grade reading and writing, and it's about the resources and having access to them in order for them to be able to teach and do what's important for our students. So I think the key component there is always funding. As you know, in serving in the legislature, there were some draconian cuts that happened back in 2011 to education, things that really impacted our schools. But since then, in 2019, we had some very impactful education funding, and we really had a historic school finance reform bill. A lot of this added, and just to be specific, it added $6.5 billion of public education funding. It also increased the amount of money spent for students receiving special education services. It increased the mainstream special education rate from 1.1 to 1.5. Now, I can tell you there's still so much to do and so much that we have to focus on. But if you also look at some of the legislation that we've worked on and that we've sponsored and passed and also filed, you know, I co-sponsored Senate Bill 776 by Senator Lucio. And what that did, it created an inclusive UIL sports program for students with special needs. So it's all about inclusion. And we want to make sure every child has not only the resources, but the funding in our schools so that they can have an equitable education and have the same opportunities as everyone else.
Thank you for that. And I mentioned this earlier to Representative Loya. We're so glad to see that the legislature continued the funding for schools at the same level that they had at the prior session. We hope that that will continue again in this coming session because money does matter. It does matter for people to be able to provide all the services that are needed.
Absolutely.
And other services that are needed are in the healthcare arena. Medicaid provides health coverage to over 74 million Americans, including low-income adults, children, pregnant women, elderly adults, and 10 million non-elderly people with disabilities. Medicaid is administered by states and funded jointly by the state and federal government. People with disabilities are often the people most in need of quality health insurance, especially long-term services and supports, which are only provided through Medicaid. What is your vision for healthcare in our state and local communities with a view towards the need of people with all kinds of disabilities?
I think that's an excellent question, and healthcare is the key for success, and I'll tell you why. You know, my vision for the future of healthcare is making sure that all Texans have access to high quality and affordable healthcare. That is very important. Being a firefighter, a paramedic, and a flight paramedic for over 20 years, we have seen the impact in our communities of people that don't have access to healthcare and how important it is. You know, we want them to be able to afford to go to doctor, afford prescription medications. Many times we see it when we respond to a call in the ambulance that people have waited way too long and the public becomes sicker because they do not have affordable health care. So, you know, in 2009, I joint-authored the House version of Senate Bill 187, which created a Medicaid buy-in program for kids with special needs. Now, this is for a lot of our working families here in the state of Texas. It's a big bill. It's something where they can have affordable access to health care here in the state of Texas. A decade later, this vital legislation has helped hundreds of working families in Texas, providing them much needed care for their special needs children without going bankrupt. That is a big key, and that is a success for us here in Texas. You know, Texas, as we all know, has the highest uninsured rate in the nation. The highest uninsured population rate in the nation. And yet, we know that the powers that be, the Republicans in charge, have yet to work on addressing this issue. You know, they repeatedly try to abolish the Affordable Care Act. They repeatedly vote against accepting billions of federal Medicaid funds to expand Medicaid here in the state of Texas, which would make healthcare access much more affordable for people here in Texas. And let me tell you what happens, how that translates. Many people say, well, my premiums in Texas aren't going down for healthcare, especially when it comes to insurance. Well, let me tell you why. Republicans have refused to expand Medicaid. Therefore, if there was an expansion of Medicaid, more people would have that access to federal funds that they would not have to go out into the public sector or the private sector to seek any type of insurance. Therefore, you know, those rates would drop, and we would see a lot of people who can afford that health care have their premiums drop as well. So Texas is one of only a dozen states that have declined to expand Medicare. But let me also tell you what happens. You know, Texas lawmakers should not be making it harder for people with disabilities to vote. That's one thing that I'm a strong advocate for, and it's access to vote. Senate Bill 1 has made it harder for people with disabilities to vote, and we know 20% of our U.S. population are disabled. So with that, I want to tell you that solutions like expanding our services, expanding Medicaid, and making sure that we have affordable health care is the key, not only for our communities, but our community with disabilities as well.
Thank you. And Representative, give us that Senate bill number again on the bill that did pass. For those that are listening online, they may want to write it down in case they were not aware of it.
Correct. That's Senate Bill 7, and that created the Medicaid buying programs for children with special needs.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right, we are on time, and we are now transitioning over to Hidalgo County Commissioner Precinct 4 race. I don't know if we have our candidates here on this one. We have, I believe, Ms. Ellie Torres, that was going to join us this evening. Is she here?
We're running a little early.
Okay.
She's on the schedule at 6:33.
Oh, okay. Well, we are actually early then. All right. We've got 4 minutes, yeah.
He's gonna play Bobby Guetta's video
Okay,
now.
well, we'll go ahead then, and we had our state representative for District 41, Bobby Guetta, was invited. He wasn't able to attend in person, but he did send us a video response, and so that is going to be played now. Thank you.
The needs of all children, including those with disabilities, is to ensure that teachers and students have the tools they need to be successful and the training to use those tools effectively. My mother was a teacher and a principal and one of the founding members of Region 1 who brought bilingual education to the Rio Grande Valley. Growing up, I saw firsthand the challenges she faced as an educator and the positive impact she played in her students' lives. As I have in the past, I will work tirelessly to ensure our public school system is robust and adequately financed, focused on the needs of each unique student, and that each campus is a safe environment for both teachers and students. During the 86th session, I supported bills listed on the Disability Rights of Texas Education bills of importance, such as HB 3, the Sweeping Education Reform Bill from that session. During the 87th regular session, I passed House Bill 2256, which creates a course for bilingual special education that uniquely equips teachers to serve bilingual students who are also disabled. This training helps teachers identify the difference between language barriers and developmental delays. The legislature sets standards to evaluate a school's and its students' successes. It's important to hold schools accountable by listening to teachers, parents, students, and advocacy groups about what is working in their schools and what is not, and then work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to make positive changes. Finally, it's also important to keep our kids in the classroom. This means COVID protocols that make in-person learning safe for all students, especially those who are immunocompromised. My vision for healthcare in our state and local communities is simple. I have long been a supporter of Medicaid expansion. Every person who is eligible from Medicaid with the federal match to state dollars should be enrolled in Medicaid. This is good for people, good for business, and especially good for our community. During my first session, I passed Medicaid expansion for the RGV area through an 1115 waiver during the last session. I filed a statewide Medicaid expansion bill, but it did not get a hearing. I recognize that people with all kinds of disabilities face additional barriers to healthcare access. Medicaid expansion is a good first step to removing those barriers and assuring people with disabilities get adequate healthcare coverage.
Well, thank you to Representative Bobby Guerra for his video, and we do have joining us this evening Commissioner for Precinct 4, Ms. Torres. Come on up. And we did invite both candidates to join us this evening, and Commissioner Torres is here, so we are very grateful that she was able to make it out this evening. Thank you. And Commissioner, what we've been doing is I will give an intro, kind of set up a question, and then we'll have a question for you. We have about 3 minutes per question. We have a gentleman here who will be holding up a sign to let you know. And if for some reason your mic doesn't work, let us know because we have plenty of them. And so we think we can get you one mic that will work tonight. So, Commissioner, access to accessible, affordable, and reliable transportation gives people with disabilities important opportunities to go to school or work, take care of their health, live where they choose, and participate in all aspects of community life. Local constituents depend on local public transportation options, including taxis, when they have no other option. However, there are currently no accessible taxi options in the Rio Grande Valley. What would you do to expand access to affordable and accessible transportation for people with disabilities to have access to inner city connectivity within the county, especially in the rural areas?
Well, thank you so much for that question. And quite frankly, that hits home for me because when I came as county commissioner, I recognized from a lot of the parents that live out in the rural areas, they were asking about or requesting that we do something about the mobility from the rural areas into the inner city. So we quickly assessed that, and we saw that there were no rural modes of transportation for our community and for all residents. And so we partnered with the Lower Rio Grande Development Council and Valley Metro, and I'm proud to say that we brought our very first bus stop to the rural area of Ivalville County, to an area in San Carlos. It's a very poverty-stricken area. And this bus stop is accessible to everyone. We made sure the bus stop was ADA compliant so that everyone could access the Valley Metro system. It runs daily from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I want to mention the route because it just goes to show you how it's very comprehensive. There's other bus stops within the route where people can transfer onto another route and access education, access healthcare, entertainment, shopping, pretty much anything that's in the route of the Valley Metro system. So the one that we set up in San Carlos goes from Huesaco to Ed Couch, Elsa, La Villa, San Carlos, UTRGV, education, Edinburgh City Hall, University Drive in Edinburgh, Huesaco City Hall, SCC Mid-Valley Campus. And of course, within all that city, there are other stops that they can transfer it onto and get other parts of the valley. And this is accessible to anyone that's traveling independently or with an escort. And I'm a former educator, and it's one of my priorities to make sure that we support our residents, and especially those that are most vulnerable, and have access to, like I said, health, education, and all our retail businesses out there. So, and I don't want it to be the first and only, but rather let this be the first of many to come.
And we're very familiar with it. In fact, Commissioner Flores' office worked very closely with UTRGV because we do have an area health education clinic that provides primary care services out in the San Carlos area. And y'all were so gracious to work with us and say, yes, we want to do this, and make sure that we had a bus stop there for those who need to be able to access the healthcare services. So thank you for that. And now, let's talk about the rideshare industry, because we've all seen Uber, Lyft, of course the taxes again. How would you hold the rideshare industry accountable to ensure that they also provide some accessible transportation options, including to passengers who use wheelchairs and power chairs, or who cannot transfer out of their chairs in the county?
Well, first and foremost, with the American Disabilities Act, this is a guarantee that people with disabilities have equal access to public transportation. And that means that public transportation providers cannot refuse to provide transportation because of a disability. However, with these newly formed independent contractor type of services, I see and I've read about how they are playing out, in my opinion, discriminating. And so I think we need to hold them accountable. I myself, in the position that I'm in, I will continue to advocate for persons with disabilities, work with legislators to ensure that we hold the rideshare industry to be in compliance with all the standards of the ADA that was passed many years ago. Like I said, anything less than that, in my opinion, is plain out discrimination, and we do need to hold them accountable, but we need measures there, and we need voices, collective voices, to come out and make sure that they are meeting the ADA, and they are in compliance with what was established many, many years ago. They're not immune. They should not be immune to the act that we passed many, many years ago. And of course, with my authority, with my voice as a county commissioner, I will join forces with anyone and everyone to make sure that there's justice and fairness for everyone, and accountability. At the end of the day, accountability. They want to be a business, an independent business owner, and have your own car to ride around and give people rides and so forth. Then you need to make sure that it is available to all persons with all abilities.
Well, I like that, collective voices, and there is power in numbers, and in fact, speaking of power in numbers, with regard to voting, Americans with disabilities face many obstacles and barriers to voting, including inaccessible polling places and voting equipment, difficulty getting to polling places, and poorly informed election officials and poll workers. In the past election, over 70% of polling places were not accessible. So what steps would you take to ensure that people with disabilities in the Rio Grande Valley have the same access to voting, registering, and casting a ballot as people without disabilities?
Well, I know that we at Ivalville County, we as a Commissioner's Court, as well as our elections department, is very committed to ensure that all voters have that opportunity, whether they have a disability or not, that everyone has the, ensure that they're able to come in and cast a vote, whether they choose to come in to a voting site, a location, or they choose to use other options that we do have available for pretty much anyone who is electing to utilize those services. As your county commissioner, I've supported the elections department over the course of my tenure as a county commissioner. We've provided for our elections department to hire additional support staff to meet the mandates of all these new rules and so forth. We've made sure that all of our polling sites are ADA compliant, that there is access for anyone who is needing to come in, whether they need to utilize a ramp with their wheelchair, whether they're needing to get someone to come out to their car for curbside. We make sure that every location, and that we have plenty of locations where people can go to cast their vote. We do have 28 locations, and I have talked with Ms. Ramon, and they're all accessible. They're all ADA compliant for anyone who chooses to exit their vehicle and go in and cast a vote, or utilize the curb service. Or for other instances, there is a mail, you can mail in your ballot. But regardless, anything that we can do to make sure that everyone exercises the right to vote, either persons with disabilities or a variety of abilities, is able to come in and cast their vote. And like I said, we do offer 28 polling sites for early vote, and all of them are accessible for all voters that are registered to come out and cast that vote. And I will support that throughout my tenure as county commissioner.
Thank you, and I'll give a personal plug here. We do have a polling site at the university. Thank you to the county for approving that. and we do have it accessible. And also, we notice that a lot of people are taking advantage of the curbside. So we want to make sure they have plenty of space for the vehicles as they go through and get curbside voting. And with that, that is our last group of candidates who are coming in this evening. Thank you again, Commissioner, for joining us. And thank you to everybody who is watching online. This is so important. It's so important to make your voices heard. And you heard it many times tonight. So please go out and vote and to be informed. Know those candidates and stand with you on your issues, and to please go out and vote. So thank you again to everyone who joined us this evening.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. Thank you so much to Veronica for hosting. And thank you, we just want to say a couple of quick thank yous before we wrap up. Thank you to Jonathan Vasquez and the South Texas Literacy Coalition for helping with all of our technology tonight. Thank you to the SEED and Mission, which is the Center for Education and Economic Development. Thank you to them for providing us this wonderful space. And we also wanted to shout out our disability partner organizations that have helped us by sharing information about this event and also hosting watch parties for people across the valley. We want to say a special hello to Project SOAR with Team Mario. There's a group of self-advocates watching right now and taking notes, and we're so glad you're with us. So Team Mario, we thank you. We also want to recognize RGV DSA, Capable Kids, Partners Resource Network, the Texas Council on Developmental Disabilities, the Disability Chamber of Commerce, RGV, Vail, Bebo's Angels, Idea Public Schools, and Autismo, Autism in My Life. Thank you guys so much for all that you do to make the Valley a more accessible and inclusive place for individuals with disabilities. We appreciate you paying attention and hanging out with us this evening. Good night.